The alien queen mocked my silence, until she discovered what I was hiding. The cold metal walls of the prison ship felt like they were closing in on him. He had been trapped here for what seemed like forever, with nothing but the sound of his own breathing to remind him that he was still alive. The human soldier sat silently in his cell, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes fixed on nothing in particular. He didn't move. He didn't speak, not because he was afraid, but because he knew better. They had tried everything. The alien guards had come at him with their weapons, their strange voices demanding answers, but he had not responded. They didn't understand why he didn't break. They thought he was just another prisoner, another weak human to be broken down. But he wasn't like the others. He wasn't afraid. And he wasn't going to give them what they wanted. Not now, not ever. At first, they thought he was just a coward. He had been captured during an ambush on the outskirts of their colony, dragged into this prison like every other prisoner. But when the queen herself had ordered him to be brought before her, things had changed. They had thought that with a few questions, they could get the information they needed, but the soldier didn't speak. The alien queen, a creature known for her ability to read minds, for her terrifying control over both her soldiers and her enemies, was fascinated. She had faced many races, many worlds, but humans were different. They were unpredictable. And this human was the most unpredictable of them all. Her servants had asked him questions. They had tried threats, rewards, promises of safety, even lies. Nothing had worked. He had remained silent, his expression unreadable, his posture calm. No matter how many days had passed, he never gave in, and that to the queen was a puzzle that needed solving. She visited him in his cell, her long, elegant form appearing like a shadow in the dim light. The guards stood back, whispering among themselves, unsure of what their queen had planned. They had never seen her so intrigued by anyone. Even the mightiest of enemies had eventually crumbled under her gaze, but not this human. He sat in the middle of his cell, unyielding. "Why do you remain silent?" the queen asked in a voice that was smooth like silk, but with an edge that could cut through stone. She wasn't angry, not yet, but her patience was thinning. "You have been captured, your people will fall. Why do you not beg for your life?" The soldier didn't respond. He didn't even move a muscle. It was as if he hadn't even heard her. But he had. He had heard every word she said. He just wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a reply. The queen's eyes narrowed. She had seen many beings cower before her, all begging for their lives or pleading for mercy. But this human was different. She could feel it in her bones. There was something about him, something more than just his silence. "I could destroy you," the queen continued, her voice laced with venom. "Do you think your silence will protect you? Do you think your people will come to your rescue?" She chuckled darkly, her laughter echoing in the small, cold chamber. "They won't. And when I finally break you, when I finally make you speak, you will regret your stubbornness." Still, the soldier did not respond. He sat motionless, his eyes still fixed on the ground, his body relaxed but unwavering. The queen's lips curled into a smile, one that was both mocking and curious. "Perhaps you think you are too important to speak. Perhaps you think your silence is some kind of shield. But I will break you, just like I've broken every other enemy who stood in my way. You will speak." Days passed, and the queen's obsession with the silent soldier grew. She couldn't understand why he refused to speak. She had tried everything: torture, promises, manipulation, and threats. Yet the soldier remained steadfast. It was as if his silence was his weapon, a shield that protected him from her power. She ordered her guards to bring him to her chamber. She needed answers, but the soldier remained calm, his face impassive as ever. As they walked through the halls of the ship, the queen couldn't help but notice the way the human carried himself. There was a strength in him, an undeniable confidence that she had never seen in any of her other prisoners. "You are strong," the queen said, breaking the silence that had hung between them. "But even the strongest beings break eventually. I will find your weakness, human, and when I do, you will speak." The soldier didn't respond. He didn't even acknowledge her words. But inside, he knew what was at stake. His mission was far more important than his own life. His silence was his strength, and it was the only thing that kept the alien forces from discovering the truth of who he was and what he carried with him. The queen's curiosity was now a fire burning in her chest. She was determined to break him, to get inside his mind and discover why he was so silent. But the soldier knew something she didn't. The more she pushed, the more dangerous it would become for her. He had been trained for this. His silence was not born of fear, but of necessity. As the days wore on, the queen grew more and more fascinated with her prisoner. She couldn't understand why he didn't speak. Was it arrogance? Was it fear? Or was it something else? Something deeper? She would find out. She had to, but the soldier knew better. He wasn't just any prisoner. And his silence wasn't weakness. It was the only thing that stood between the queen and the truth. The truth that, if discovered, would destroy everything she had worked for. The soldier had one mission: protect the secret inside him. His silence was all that kept it safe. And that was why he would never speak. The days in the cold, metal prison were blending together. Time had lost all meaning for the human soldier. The constant hum of the ship's engines, the endless echoes of alien voices, the harsh glare of artificial lights, it all felt like a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. He couldn't tell anymore. But what he did know was this: he had to stay silent, no matter what. The mission was too important. His silence wasn't just a defense against the queen's cruelty, it was the key to everything. The alien queen had tried to break him before, but now she was getting more creative. She knew that brute force wouldn't work on him. She had tried every tactic she knew, every psychological trick in her vast arsenal, and none of them had succeeded. He hadn't flinched when she threatened to destroy him. He hadn't blinked when she promised rewards or power. All he had done was sit there, his eyes calm and his body still, the picture of unshakable determination. This time she had decided to change things. She wouldn't just break him with force. She would use her mind. The queen entered the prison chamber, her steps echoing as she approached the soldier. Her tall, elegant form cast a long shadow in the dim light. She stopped in front of him and studied him closely, her piercing eyes scanning his face. "Why do you do this?" she asked, her voice cold but laced with a strange curiosity. "You are human, a race so easily broken. I have seen it countless times, but you are different. I cannot understand it. Why do you refuse to speak?" The soldier didn't answer. He didn't even blink. The queen's expression softened for a moment, but only for a split second. She leaned in closer, her face just inches from his. "Do you think your silence will save you? Do you think it makes you powerful? You are nothing here. You are mine. You belong to me, and yet you refuse to speak." She placed a hand gently on his shoulder, her grip light but firm. "I could make you speak. I could force you to beg, but I would rather hear it from you willingly. So tell me, human, what is it that you are hiding?" The soldier's heart raced, but his face remained unchanged. He didn't answer, even though every part of him screamed to reveal everything. If he spoke, if he told her the truth, it could all be over. The weapon inside him, the thing that could destroy entire alien species, would be exposed. And once they knew it, they would use it against humanity. He couldn't let that happen. No matter the cost, he couldn't speak. For a moment, the queen just stood there, her hand still on his shoulder. She was watching him closely, her eyes searching for a crack, a sign of weakness. But there was nothing. His resolve was unshaken. The queen sighed and pulled her hand away, standing tall again. "You are strong, I will give you that, but strength is not enough to survive here. You will break. It is only a matter of time." She turned to leave, but then stopped, looking back over her shoulder. "I am not finished with you, not yet." The soldier watched as she walked out of the room, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Once the door slid shut, he allowed himself to close his eyes for a brief moment of relief. But the relief was short-lived. The battle was far from over. Days passed, and the queen grew more obsessed with the silent human prisoner. She would visit him almost daily now, each time trying a new approach. Sometimes she would talk to him, her voice gentle, almost coaxing. Other times she would be cold and distant, demanding that he speak, but nothing worked. The soldier never spoke. As much as the queen hated to admit it, she was becoming frustrated. She had broken every prisoner before, every last one. No one had ever stood up to her for this long. She had tried threats, promises, even manipulation, but still the human remained silent. One day, the queen decided to try something different. She entered the prison chamber with a new plan in mind. This time, instead of speaking to him directly, she would test him. She would push him further, make him believe there was no way out. "You are going to watch," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "I will show you what happens when humans refuse to cooperate." She motioned to the guards, and they dragged a new prisoner into the room. The prisoner was another human, one that had been captured just days before. He was barely conscious, his clothes torn and his face bruised. The queen smiled as the guards threw the prisoner to the ground in front of the silent soldier. "Watch carefully," the queen repeated. "This is what happens to those who defy me." The new prisoner looked up, his eyes wide with fear as he saw the soldier sitting motionless across the room. "Please," he begged, his voice shaky, "please help me, don't let her do this." The soldier didn't react. He didn't move a muscle. He couldn't help the prisoner. He had a mission to complete, and every second he spent speaking, every second he spent helping someone else, would bring him closer to revealing the secret that he had been hiding. He had to stay quiet. He had to stay strong. The queen watched the scene unfold, her eyes locked on the soldier's face. She was waiting for something, anything, to show that he cared, that he would speak. But he didn't. His silence was like a wall that no one could break through. She stepped closer to the new prisoner, her smile cold and calculating. "You see, human," she said, "this is what happens when you fail to cooperate." With a single motion, the queen raised her hand and the guards began their work. The soldier turned his head away, his gaze fixed on the far wall. He couldn't watch, but he knew it was necessary. He couldn't let his emotions get in the way. The mission was too important. And yet, even as he stayed silent, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He couldn't help the prisoner, but he could still hear the screams. The queen was winning. Slowly but surely, she was chipping away at him, piece by piece. He had to hold on, but the doubt was starting to creep in. Could he keep his silence for much longer? Could he stay strong enough to protect the secret he had been tasked with keeping? As the guards finished, the queen turned her attention back to the soldier. She was still watching him, waiting for him to react. But there was no reaction, no emotion, nothing. She tilted her head, her curiosity growing. "You are a curious creature, human. You don't fear me, do you?" The soldier remained still. He didn't fear her. But he feared what would happen if he broke his silence. What would happen to his people if they knew? He didn't respond. He couldn't. And so the queen was left with nothing but her own questions. Why had this human not broken? Why had he not given in to the fear and the pain? She was no closer to understanding the soldier, but one thing was certain. She was determined to find out. And the longer he remained silent, the more she was convinced there was something more to him than just a prisoner. Days bled into each other, one indistinguishable from the next. The soldier had long since lost track of time. It didn't matter. Time was irrelevant in this place. He had one mission, one purpose: to stay silent, to protect the secret that lay deep within him. Everything else could be ignored, but the queen's persistence was wearing at him. Each day, she came closer to understanding something about him. She was a master of manipulation, a mind sharper than any human he had ever encountered. At first, he had thought her power was just a weapon of force, but now he was beginning to see the depth of her cunning. The queen had tried to break him through pain, through fear, through promises of rewards and threats of destruction. When none of those worked, she switched tactics. She began speaking to him as though she were not his captor but his confidant. Her voice, once cold and demanding, now carried a strange warmth, almost friendly, as though they shared some kind of bond. "Tell me, human," she began one day, her voice softer than before, "what is it that drives you to remain silent? What is it that you are protecting?" She leaned in closer to him, her golden eyes glowing with an intensity that made him feel, for the briefest moment, as if she could see into his very soul. The soldier didn't answer, of course. He couldn't. The truth was a weapon he couldn't afford to reveal. But as much as he wanted to look away, to ignore her words, something in her presence pulled at him. It was like she understood him in a way no one else ever had. She saw something in him, and it wasn't weakness. It was strength. "I'm not your enemy, you know," she continued, her voice low, almost coaxing. "I could offer you power beyond your wildest dreams. You could be free, no longer a prisoner. You could join me, join my cause, and together we could reshape the galaxy. I can give you everything." Her words were like a whisper in his mind, offering promises of a life beyond the cage he was locked in. He had heard these kinds of promises before, from people who had no intention of following through, from those who wanted to use him. But the queen, she was different. She was offering more than just freedom. She was offering something far more dangerous, a chance to become something more than just a soldier. The soldier didn't respond, but in his mind, 1,000 thoughts swirled. He had been trained to resist, to never trust anyone, especially an enemy like her. His silence was his only defense, and yet every time she spoke, he felt the walls around him start to crack ever so slightly. "I know you are not afraid," the queen said with a slight smile, as though she could read his thoughts. "I can see it in your eyes. You are strong, perhaps stronger than you realize, but even the strongest can be swayed by the right motivation." Tell me, human, what would it take for you to speak? Her words were soft, but her tone held the weight of a challenge. And though he didn't say a word, her words felt like a test to see just how far she could push him. She was a queen, a ruler of worlds, and her presence demanded respect. He could feel the pull of her power, the magnetic attraction of her intelligence, her charisma. He had been trained to resist, to fight back against any form of manipulation, but there was something about her that made him hesitate. Her eyes never left his, as though she was searching for a crack in his resolve. But there was nothing. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply waited as he had done since the moment they captured him. Perhaps you think I don't understand, the queen continued, her voice softening even further. Perhaps you believe that silence is your greatest weapon, but you are wrong. Silence is a trap. It's a wall you've built around yourself, and walls are meant to be broken. I will break you, human. I will break you in ways you cannot even imagine. The soldier didn't flinch. He couldn't. The moment he showed any weakness, the queen would have won. The secret inside him, the weapon that could destroy entire species, could not fall into her hands. He couldn't afford to reveal it. His silence was the only thing keeping the queen from understanding just how much power lay within him. He had to keep it locked away. But the queen wasn't done yet. She had only just begun to play her game. That evening the queen summoned him once again. This time, however, she brought with her a different approach. She had a prisoner, a new one, and this time she would use someone else to get the answers she needed. The door to the soldier's cell opened, and a new figure was pushed inside. It was a human, barely conscious, bloodied and bruised from the latest round of torture. The soldier recognized him instantly. He was one of his comrades, someone he had fought alongside in the resistance. His name was John, but he looked like a shadow of the man he had once known. The queen smiled as the guards tossed the soldier's comrade to the floor in front of him. She stepped closer to the silent human, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Look at him," she said, her voice thick with satisfaction. "Look at what happens to those who defy me. This could be you. It could all be over in a second, but you refuse to speak. Why?" The soldier's heart clenched in his chest, but he did not move. He could feel John's pain, hear the ragged breaths he took, but he couldn't let his emotions show. If he gave in now, if he spoke even one word, John's pain would be for nothing. The queen knelt down beside John, her eyes flashing with a cruel gleam. "I will make you choose, human, speak, or watch him die." John's eyes flickered to the soldier, and for a brief moment their gazes locked. The soldier could see the fear in John's eyes, but also something else, something deeper. John was counting on him, just as he had counted on him during the battles they had fought together. But there was nothing the soldier could do. His mission came first. His silence was all he had. John's breath came in ragged gasps as he looked up at the queen. "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Don't hurt him, he won't speak, he's not like the rest of us." The queen's face twisted into a cold smile. "We'll see about that." She turned to the soldier, her voice dark and threatening. "You will speak, human, I will break you. You cannot protect your secret forever." The soldier didn't answer. He couldn't, he had no choice. But what hurt most was knowing that John, his comrade, his friend, was going to die all because he refused to speak. The queen gestured to her guards, and the soldier closed his eyes, waiting for the inevitable. He couldn't help John. He couldn't help anyone. The truth was too dangerous, and in the silence he felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. He was alone, but he had made his choice. His silence was his weapon. And no matter how much the queen pushed, no matter how much she tortured those around him, he would never speak. Not now, not ever. The soldier had never felt more isolated than he did now. Every day in the alien prison was another test, another battle for control over his mind and his silence. The queen had pushed him to his limits, trying every tactic in her vast arsenal of manipulation, but nothing had worked. She hadn't broken him. Yet. There was a moment when the soldier had wondered if she would. If the queen would somehow find a way to make him speak. She had been relentless, her attempts getting more devious as the days passed. She knew he was hiding something, and each day she came closer to understanding what it was. He could see it in her eyes, an unyielding determination to crack him open. But every time she spoke to him, every time she offered him power, freedom, or even death as a way out, the soldier remained silent. His resolve had never wavered, not once. His silence wasn't just a refusal to cooperate. It was a shield, a wall that he had carefully built to protect what was hidden inside him. A weapon, a secret too dangerous for anyone to know. The queen was beginning to sense that this human wasn't just a prisoner. She had long known that there was something special about him, something she couldn't quite understand. His strength wasn't just physical. It was deeper, buried beneath layers of silence and carefully constructed barriers. She had seen others break, had made them beg for mercy, but this human, he was different. He was holding back something, and that knowledge was becoming an obsession. One evening, as the prison's artificial lights flickered above, the queen made her decision. She would stop playing games. She would no longer use the usual methods of torture or manipulation. This time, she would take a different approach, one that was far riskier but far more rewarding. The guards opened the door to the soldier's cell, their footsteps echoing on the cold, metallic floor. The soldier sat as he always did, his back straight, his hands resting calmly on his knees. He didn't look up. He didn't acknowledge their presence. The queen entered the room, her regal form cutting through the gloom like a shadow. Her eyes were cold, but there was something new in them, a glimmer of understanding, perhaps. Something that hinted she was no longer simply trying to break him. She was trying to understand him. "I've had enough of this game," the queen said, her voice sharp and unyielding. She stepped closer to him, her boots clicking against the floor. "I've tried everything, and still you refuse to speak. You hide something, don't you? I can feel it, human. There's something inside you that you are desperate to protect." The soldier said nothing. The queen's expression shifted slightly, her lips curling into a small, almost amused smile. "You think you're protecting something. But it's becoming clear that whatever you're hiding, it's not just valuable, it's dangerous. You know it, don't you?" She leaned in, her breath warm against his ear. "You have something inside you, something that could change the entire war, something that could end my empire. And you know that if you speak, I will take it from you." The soldier felt the pressure of her words, but his resolve did not falter. He didn't speak. Not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't. He couldn't let her know. He couldn't let anyone know. The secret he carried was too important, but the queen wasn't finished yet. She wasn't going to let him go so easily. With a wave of her hand, the guard stepped forward. The soldier tensed, but he made no move. This was nothing new. The queen had used force before, but the soldier had endured it without so much as a grimace. He knew this was part of the plan, but today was different. The queen's eyes darkened, and she stepped even closer to the soldier, her hand resting on his shoulder. Her fingers dug into his skin, pressing down with a strength he hadn't expected. "You will speak, human. You will reveal your secret, or I will make you wish you had," she whispered. Her voice was low, almost a growl. "Do you think you're the only one who can keep a secret? You think I can't break you? You think you can outlast me?" The soldier said nothing. The queen's patience had worn thin, and with a sudden motion she pulled away from him. "Enough! You are not my equal. You never were. You will break just like all the others. But I will break you in a way that will make your silence seem like a joke." She turned to her guards, her eyes still locked on the soldier. "Bring him!" The soldiers moved quickly, grabbing the soldier's arms and pulling him to his feet. He didn't resist. He couldn't. The queen was not playing games anymore, and he knew it. He was being taken somewhere even more dangerous than this cell. They led him down a long corridor, past doors and security checkpoints. He could feel the tension in the air, the growing sense of unease in his gut. Where were they taking him? What was she planning now? Eventually, they reached a large chamber, a space so vast it seemed to stretch on forever. The walls were lined with strange alien devices, machines that hummed with a quiet, ominous energy. The room was bathed in a harsh, artificial light. The queen stood in the center of the room, her arms crossed as she waited for the soldier to be brought forward. "You are going to show me your secret, human," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "And this time I won't be asking. I will make you show me." The soldier was pushed into the center of the room, and the door slammed shut behind him. He stood there facing the queen, his mind racing. He couldn't let her do this. He couldn't allow her to get close to the truth. The weapon inside him was too dangerous. If she found out, it would mean the end of everything. The queen stepped forward, her eyes glinting with malice. "You have been a worthy opponent, human, but it is time for this game to end." She raised a hand, and the machines in the room whirred to life. The soldier felt a strange, invisible pressure pushing down on him, as if the very air in the room had thickened. The queen's smile widened. "You will speak, or I will force you to," she said, her voice a mixture of triumph and anticipation. The soldier stood his ground, though his heart was pounding in his chest. He knew what she was doing. She was using technology to break his mind, to force him to reveal the truth. But he couldn't allow it. He had to stay silent. But then something strange happened. As the pressure mounted, the soldier felt a shift within himself. Something deep inside him, something he had kept hidden for so long, began to stir. His chest tightened, and for the first time he felt the weight of the secret he had been carrying. It was too much. The queen saw it. Her eyes widened in understanding. She had seen something in the soldier's expression, something that made her hesitate for just a moment. The soldier's body began to tremble, but not from fear. It was something else. The power inside him, the thing he had been hiding, was awakening. And suddenly, the silence that had protected him for so long no longer seemed like a shield. It was a cage. The queen smiled knowingly. "It's time, human. Show me what you've been hiding." And in that moment, the soldier knew that the battle had only just begun. He had kept his silence for so long, but now he realized the time had come to face the truth. The queen would learn what he was hiding, whether he was ready or not. The weight of silence pressed down on the soldier's chest like a suffocating force. It had been so long since he had spoken. So long since he had allowed himself to let down the walls he had built around the secret hidden deep inside him. But now, with the queen standing before him, her piercing eyes watching his every movement, the pressure of that secret seemed almost unbearable. He could feel the power inside him beginning to stir, the dormant force that had been buried for so long. It was a part of him now, like another layer of skin, something he couldn't escape. And yet, even as the power thrummed within him, he knew he couldn't let it out. Not yet. Not unless he had no other choice. The queen's smile had faded. Her patience was wearing thin. She had tried every method, every trick in her vast arsenal, and yet this human, this soldier, had resisted them all. He had not begged, not pleaded, and certainly not spoken. But the queen wasn't one to be defeated so easily. She had broken entire species before, reduced them to nothing. This human, though stubborn, would be no different. She would find a way to break him. She had too. "You've made this harder than it needed to be," the queen said, her voice cold, filled with growing frustration. "But that's fine. I will just have to dig deeper. I will pull the truth from you, whether you like it or not." She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she looked down at him, sensing the shift in his energy. It wasn't just the soldier's mind she was trying to break now. It was his very will. "You think your silence makes you strong, don't you?" she continued, her tone almost mocking. "But in the end, silence is weakness, a coward's shield. When I break through your silence, I will see everything you've been hiding, and I will take it. I will use it. And then you will be nothing more than a broken, obedient tool, just like everyone else." The soldier's heart was pounding now, his breath quickening. He could feel the power rising inside him, bubbling to the surface. It wasn't just anger, it was something else, something far older, something far more dangerous. The queen was wrong. Silence wasn't weakness. It had never been weakness. It had been his only defense. And now he realized that the very thing he had been hiding for so long, this hidden power, this weapon within him, wasn't just a defense. It was his strength, and it wasn't meant to be controlled. It was meant to be unleashed. The queen saw the change in him, saw the shift in his posture, the way his eyes darkened with a new understanding. For the first time, she looked uncertain. She had pushed him, manipulated him, threatened him, and yet here he stood, still silent, still unbroken. But now there was something else in his gaze, something dangerous. "Is it fear?" she asked, though she wasn't sure if she was asking him or herself. "Are you afraid of what you're hiding, or are you simply too stubborn to let it out?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Without warning, the soldier's body tensed, his muscles coiling like a spring ready to snap. A sudden surge of power shot through him, radiating out in waves, filling the room with an intensity that even the queen couldn't ignore. The ground beneath their feet seemed to vibrate, the air thickening as though it were alive. The queen stepped back, her expression shifting to one of awe and alarm. She had been close, so close, but she hadn't realized just how close she was to the truth. The power the soldier had been hiding was more than she had ever imagined. It was raw, untamed, and lethal. "Stop," she commanded, her voice filled with authority, but it wavered slightly. "You're only making things worse for yourself." But the soldier didn't listen. He couldn't. He was no longer thinking. He was feeling. He could feel the power coursing through him, the energy that had been locked away for so long, threatening to break free. The queen's words meant nothing. Her threats meant nothing. The only thing that mattered now was the truth. He could feel the air crackling with electricity as the power continued to rise. The walls of the chamber seemed to bend and stretch, warping under the weight of the energy he was releasing. The queen's expression shifted again, this time to one of recognition. She knew what this was. She had seen it before in other species, in other worlds, but never in a human. She had pushed him too far. With a sudden, sharp motion, the soldier released the energy. It was like a wave crashing against the shore, a tidal force that swept through the room, knocking the queen off her feet. The power surged outward, ripping through the walls, shattering the machines that lined the chamber. The ground shook violently, and for a moment it felt as though the entire ship was about to tear apart. The soldier stood in the center of the chaos, his body glowing with the energy that had been unleashed. His chest heaved with exertion, but his eyes were calm, almost serene. The secret was out now. The power was no longer hidden, and as it radiated from him, he knew that everything had changed. There was no going back. The queen slowly rose to her feet, her face a mixture of shock and admiration. For the first time since their encounter, she wasn't in control. The soldier had taken back the power she had been trying to take from him, and now she understood. He wasn't just a prisoner, he wasn't just a soldier. He was a weapon, a force that could change the course of the war. She took a cautious step forward, her voice now softer, almost in awe. "What are you? What kind of creature are you, human?" The soldier didn't answer. He didn't need to. He had made his choice. The weapon inside him wasn't meant to be controlled. It wasn't meant to be used by the queen or anyone else. It was meant to protect his people. And now he had to ensure that it stayed out of the hands of the enemy. The queen saw it in his eyes. He wasn't just protecting a secret anymore, he was protecting humanity's last hope. "You have a choice," the soldier said, his voice finally breaking the silence. His words were steady, but his tone was final. "You can leave. You can walk away and leave my people alone, or I can show you what this power can do. But if you choose to fight, if you choose to stand in my way, I won't hesitate. I will destroy everything you've built." The queen didn't speak. She didn't need to. She could feel the weight of his words, the promise in them. For the first time, she wasn't sure if she was looking at a prisoner or a conqueror. Without another word, the soldier turned, his figure silhouetted against the chaos he had created. He walked out of the room, leaving the queen behind, her empire trembling in the wake of his power. And as he stepped into the unknown, he knew one thing for sure: there was no turning back. He had made his choice. Humanity's future now rested in his hands.